Everybody having a good day so far? Are you having fun? Have you learned something new? Did you go to lunch? Did you go out and speak to some sponsors? There's a little bit of a delay there. So I do want to say thank you again to all our sponsors. Thank you, of course, to George Wallace University, Old College of Business, for providing this lovely facility. So if you see Joanne Sexton or any other university members here, please make sure you say thank you to them. It's definitely huge of them to provide us this beautiful facility that we have today. Also our other sponsors, No Starch Press, Southward, Alpha Networks. For this particular talk, we're going to be giving away, this is the Practice of Network Security Monitoring. So that's a No Starch book. We're also giving away a Blue Team Handbook. So those giveaways will come at the very end of the talk. So pay close attention because there will be trivia questions. Okay, so you want to answer trivia questions so you can win these cool prizes. So again, thank you all for being here. I'm having a blast. Hope you are as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Justin Edgar. He's going to be giving us a talk on a scout's perspective on network defense. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Justin Edgar.
Hey guys, thanks for coming. Just a heads up, this is a cavalryman's perspective on information security. If the words MBMP and IPP give you PTSD, now's the time to leave. When I change this slide, we're going to bar and lock the doors. Just a heads up. My name is Justin Edgar. In lead speed, you take the I and then an exclamation point. My name is Justin Edgar. My Twitter handle's on there. I don't tweet, so if you want to, it's better to talk about me there than to me. I'm going to talk about myself because I'm a narcissist. I'm going to talk about the framework that I'm going to tie this to, which is the military's defensive planning methodology, if you will, for lack of a better word. We're going to focus on the IPB, or the intelligence preparation of the battlefield portion of that. I'm going to talk about why I think that's relevant to the current threat environment that is through my keyhole. Talk about some practical applications of the network, and then give some references at the end. Again, what I want to get out of this is, I'd like you thinking, really. There's a lot of published doctrine around defense on a kinetic and physical type of method, right? And I think there's a lot of intellectual property or intellectual capital that we can use as network defenders to enhance our ability to see the battlefield, to employ sensors appropriately, and to effectively combat the enemy, right? The threat. So I'm an 8-year Army veteran. I was a cavalryman, 40 pounds and a goatee ago. Here's a picture to prove it. I got out of service, as you can see, war is hell. Got out of service, went to a consulting firm, earned a CISA, quit, worked at a security firm, much happier, glad to be here. I fought a counterinsurgency. I planned operations in a counterinsurgency. So I feel, from that perspective, I'm a relevant source of information in this regard. There's me again. Narcissism. There we go. So we're going to use the F5-0 Army Operational Planning Guide as a start. This is available. Anybody can read this. It's available online. If it wasn't, you can probably get it on Pasted or something, right? And what it is, it defines a cycle of planning for the military. It allows us to take inputs, output orders, and along the way assess our ability to complete the mission and refine it. It's cyclical. It's highly resource intensive. For people who've been on battle staff, they're probably having issues just seeing this thing right now. But what it allows us to do is create a plan, assess that plan, and then go back and make changes to the plan, right? And do that in a formulaic manner. I think that's important when it comes to network architecting, network defense, because we kind of go out of willy-nilly, right? I have a network, let's defend it. Throw a bunch of appliances in there, now what, right? We don't apply intelligence, we don't give the enemy a voice in a lot of our information security planning efforts. Again, it's cyclic. A few things here, and I'm going to focus on the visualized portion of this particular graph, right? So there's a lot to this. I'm not going to go through full-blown MDMP. I'm going to focus on the visualization. Again, that's intelligence preparation of battle. And here's the manual, FM 34-130, intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Again, if you can't find online, it's probably on Facebook. So it starts in a very, Sun Tzu manner, right? Where we analyze and visualize the battlefield, In a physical battlefield, we start with a map or some sort of region and area of operations that is assigned to us, and we overlay things that impact us operationally. As you can see in the graphic there, we have vegetation, surface drainage, culverts, riots, all that stuff affects our ability to move throughout the environment. And we take that on a map and we say, okay, these are the places I can go, these are the places I can't go. And these are the places that are important to me as a defender or on an offensive capacity, right? If there's a choke point, that's important for offense, it's important for defense, right? I codify my ability to affect the enemy based upon terrain. On top of that, I overlay the enemy's ability to influence me, right? So these are, you can see the little lines here, fancy iconography or symbology for the military. These are avenues of approach, and the little X's and ticks say how large that is. So this is where the enemy can move through the environment based upon my analysis of the train's ability to support that, right? We have to take into account things like wheel travel, track travel, foot travel, etc. So what we really do is kind of have a go, no-go picture of what we can do within our area of operations. And finally, we put that into sort of templated enemy activity, right? So you see those big arrows up here. That's where the enemy can go, where we expect them to go in response to our movements or our navigation of the terrain. So once we define the terrain, we want to take a second to define the enemy. In this case, we start with what's called a doc template, a doctrinal template, and that says, based upon my composition and what I know of the enemy from an intelligence perspective, this is what they look like, right? This is their hierarchy. And on top of that, I'll take and I'll put them on the terrain. So I say, okay, I've got this many units, this is what they do. We do a little battlefield calculus, this is where they're going to go. And then I start assessing where I would place them in relationship to the terrain, right? So I got the go, no-go terrain. And we start to use that to develop courses of action, right? So we've got enemy, we've got terrain. Now we start trying to figure out what they're going to do, right? We're using intelligence, we're using either experience or intelligence functions to template the enemy's activity once they hit the ground. And these are called courses of action, COAs. And in our course of action creation, we create multiple courses of action based upon enemy activity, our likeliness of enemy activity, right? There's things that will most likely happen. The enemy will most likely come over the mountain with helicopters and shoot at us. Or most dangerous course of action. The enemy deploys a tactical nuke and we all die. Bad news. But we take these overlays and we create these courses of action and we kind of stack them up, right? So you can see in these few different diagrams here, each of these courses of action is slightly different, represents the enemy's different utilization of our space as we visualize it. We do that a few times. We want to develop a few different courses of action again, likelihood and the dangerousness of that course of action. And we do that on acetate in the service, or we have someone else do it for us on acetate, which is tedious. And we stack them all up on top of each other, and where they overlap, where these courses of action overlap, where the enemy's patterns of movement overlap, we develop what are called named areas of interest. And we label those based upon the courses of action that are present at those named areas of interest, right? So, for example, here we've got a named area of interest, named area of interest number 4, across which course of action 1, 2, and 3 pass, right? So we have some overlap there. It makes it very interesting for us when it comes to planning and the follow-on, laying on of assets to those, those named areas of interest. So when we're developing these COAs, there's a few things we need to make sure that they adhere to, right? So we want each one to be suitable. It's got to do something. The enemy's not going to, COA 1 is the enemy spins around in circles and falls down. Ideal, but unlikely. Feasible, it's got to be within the constraints of some resources, right? Again, the tactical nuke probably comes into the feasibility failure, right? Acceptable, they're not all going to get out of their vehicles and bum rush us. That's just well outside of their risk tolerances, probably. Depends where you're fighting. And it has to be unique. We're not going to overlay the same course of action over and over. And finally, there has to be some sort of consistency with doctrine, and that comes from experience and intelligence, right? And I'm going to come back to that content, that particular bullet at the end, because when we do this, again, it's cyclic. We do it over and over again. And And we enhance our intelligence, we enhance our experience by analyzing the success and failure of these plans and refining them, right? Re-employing this process. So following that, we put friendly forces on the ground, right? We apply our own friendly forces to defeat these templated courses of action in our defined area of operations, covering particularly these areas of interest, right? So we have focus, we have effort prioritization, right? Something we don't often see. We take into account the assets that we have. So we see different types of observational assets at our available for use. Excuse me. Things find like stuff flying through the air intent on hitting us. Things about people talking on the phone about nothing, etc. People who are going to go out and ask questions. We have sensors we can apply, and those sensors can sense different things. They're relevant in some contexts and irrelevant for others, and they provide to us information in a variety of means. And finally, what we're going to do is analyze the gaps. So we have our courses of action. We have sensors we can apply to observe the activity in those particular named areas of interest. And then once we've kind of taken this risk-based approach to asset application, we can look at the gaps. We can analyze the gaps. Do we need additional sensors? Do I need additional assets? Do I have 24-hour coverage of these named areas of interest? Right? It's very programmatic, very formulaic, lockstep, very military. I like it. And we use that to develop a plan. So in this case, I was a scout. We have a reconnaissance and surveillance matrix. We put people in places to do things. And very, very critical to this are your instructions, right? Your reporting requirements for that particular asset. I expect to see this happening there, and when you see that, I need you to tell me. I don't want to see, I don't want to count the bird flying through the AO with my Q36, even though I'll probably get that sometimes. So we give these sensors a prioritization when it comes to observation, and we tell them what we want them to tell us about. We're applying intelligence. We're not pulling in ridiculous amounts of information that may or may not apply to the threat that we think we're facing. So who cares, right? We're here for information security. Thanks, Justin, on that terrible talk about military doctrine. I feel like this is applicable, right? We use terms like threat reconnaissance and payload delivery, exfiltration, right? These are all very military in nature. It's a military function being performed by our enemy, and we, as a blue team, we should hope, are defenders against this activity, right? I feel like we sometimes become absorbed in the minutia. I don't think we often take the enemy's activity into our planning for architectural defense, and that's why I care in particular, and that's why I kind of crafted this talk. Something very interesting about the network is that we own the terrain, right? We can manipulate it. It's almost like the Matrix, right? We can build bridges. We can close down tunnels. We can create mountains or level them, right? So unlike physical terrain, we are in full control of our technical domain. And I think that's very, very cool. And then finally, on the defender side, as much as we'd like to, we apply observation assets because we can't exactly just go shoot these people. That would be really nice, but unfortunately that's not a possibility in most cases. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and translate this into network speak in the next portion here. And again, we want this to be a cycle, right? So forgive my shoddy graphics, but let's begin. So imagine this is your network, and everything here is inside, and everything over here is outside. We know it's a three-dimensional network. Got it. Forgive me. And this is our perimeter, right? This is a four-line truth. This is where our blue meets their red, potentially. For those who are not familiar with contour maps, this would be a mountain, right? Little ridges or little circles make things higher. So in three-dimensional terms, we have a mountain at the edge of the perimeter. We might have some bridges or tunnels that allow us to bypass that tunnel, that no-go terrain and enter the environment. And in these cases, it's things that we need from a business process standpoint. Someone's got to send us mail, don't want it, lots of spam going to happen. Web, apparently we have to let people get on Facebook. partner VPNs, things like that. There are reasons for data to enter our environment. Unfortunately, we can't just put a huge amount down. And then we have kind of anomalies, right? DNZ, for example, would be kind of in the mountains, kind of not in the mountains, might have some limited tunnels in there to access it. So this is kind of a 3D flattened pictorial reference. We also have things we want to protect, right? From a priority kind of standpoint. There are things that are important to us as an organization, things that give us a competitive advantage, things that really suck if we lose them, things that we have to protect, thanks to compliance purposes, etc. And in front of that, set people. So, you know, engineer assets, they might have access to R&D type information. Our finance people might have access to finance data. And hopefully, we have some spurs, some physical separation between the data itself that's important to us and the people who have access to that data. Does this diagram make sense? Anybody have any questions about this? I'm not a very good PowerPoint artist. Excellent. So we define the terrain. No-go terrain, key terrain, objectives, whatever you want to call it. We've got, you know, man-made structures that permit us to traverse it in unusual ways. So on top of that, now we overlay the enemy. So first we define them. This is our doctrinal template, right? This is our best guess based upon experience and intelligence that allows us to predict what the enemy is going to do, and then overlay that onto our environment. So in this case, I picked a few different ones through script kiddies, hacktivists, some advanced threats with different types of goals in the environment. Also of significance is the risk. I would say most significant, right? So things that are most likely, high rate of occurrence, and also things that are most dangerous, of high level of risk associated with that particular activity, right? And that drives our prioritization of observation when we see those overlaps, those points where we can observe the activity. And then we stick those on top of the map. So, COA 1, script kiddie. Maybe we're going to see some website defacement or abuse of, you know, not lockdown admin rights in the web. We might see him send a blanket spearfish to everyone in the organization. It's misspelled. Maybe there's a prince in Nigeria in that email or something. And that's going to land at the weakest point in our environment. The people are going to click on everything. They always click on everything. No matter how poorly crafted it is, and whether it's badstuff.exe, they're going to click on it, and they're going to get in. Right? Course of action 1. Most likely. Anybody disagree? Me neither. That's why I made this slide. COA 2, you're hacktivist. Again, web defacement. You make somebody mad, and now they're going to mess up your web page. DDoS, perhaps. DDoS of public-facing services, etc. And then maybe a more in-depth infiltration of your environment if they are able to achieve a point of penetration. So your hacktivists are going to do some doxing, right? They're maybe going to move from Susie, an accountant who clicks on everything's muck box, into accounting data and release that. It might send out a list of all your addresses for your local police department, right? Your officers. We've seen that happen. COA 3, financial theft, advanced threat. We see a lot more vectors used for these type of infiltrations, right? We'll see passive and active web infiltration methods. We'll see very, very advanced and targeted email. Thank you for your LinkedIn profile. I just saw you at this conference. Here's the agenda. And then they click on it. And they'll move, perhaps not through our no-go areas, but utilize credential abuse to move from one department into another department's data. Right? Not an unlikely scenario. We've seen this before. We all understand this. You know, we're all professionals. And then finally, IP theft. Same general infiltration routes, although perhaps leveraging downstream relationships, perhaps partners or subcontractors or the weakest link in the security chain, entering the environment, finding someone, some unsuspecting Susie clicks on everything in accounting, and then moving with legitimate administrative credentials throughout the environment, essentially ignoring all of our man-made terrain, right? Any disagreement there? Good. So again, like we talked about earlier, we're going to overlay these courses of action on our terrain and do some analysis, see some overlaps. A couple on web, whole bunch in email. That lines up with our current threat reporting, right? To 90% of stuff comes through email. A little web, a little bit part of VPN. What this doesn't do a good job of describing is the risk associated with these, right? That comes back to us. So maybe we color them differently. Maybe I, as a presenter, would color them differently. I should. Any questions so far? This kind of makes sense, right? Doing the same thing over again. That's why I like Harmon stuff. Oh, wow, let's keep going. So then we overlay our course of action, right? On the web, activists and script kiddies might have an impact on our web-facing servers, etc. In AI2, email, lots of course of action fall within that threat vector, both likely and dangerous. Make sense? So then we apply assets. Right? We take this reconnaissance matrix that I would have used the scout, or I would have been given as a scout to go do this, look at this stuff. We take that and we apply that to our observation methods, right? And place our assets in the environment with a mission, with some reason to be looking somewhere, based upon our analysis of the threat's likelihood of movement through a particular environment, right? A particular threat vector, an area where we expect to see them. Now we're applying intelligence to our actions. Now we're not stabbing in the dark. Now we're actually doing things intelligently. Right? I'm at 5 minutes, I'm going to go pretty quick. There's some things I haven't done here, and very, very worth your kind of personal exploration. Engineering assets, right? There's a lot of doctrine around engineering assets and obstacles. Obstacles are meant to do things, block, disrupt, neutralize, etc. Very worth your effort to try to convert that into cyber speak and something I'll be working on myself. However, that being said, an obstacle that's not observed is not an obstacle, so apply your intelligent observation as well. And finally, there's no mention of offensive capabilities here. And I think we all kind of walk that line as to how to affect the bad guys that are affecting us. So doing that intelligently would be something else I work on. Some references here. FM50, IPB, Intel surveillance and reconnaissance operations are great places to go and start. Start with 50 if you're interested in kind of pursuing this as a potential method to your madness, and it'll refer you as it moves through the process. And then there's some additional references. The Defense of Duffer's Drift, if you get a chance, it's a great read. It's a vignette about, it's kind of like, what's that Tom Cruise movie? I think we put it on there. Yeah, like Die Another Day, where this young lieutenant does the same thing over and over, dies and dies and dies and dies, and improves his ability to defend a particular piece of land. Very, very valuable, and I think it reinforces the point that I'm making today. FM324 counterinsurgency, highly applicable to this type of fight. It has the paradoxes of counterinsurgency in it, which I was going to repurpose into the paradoxes of counterinsurgency, cyber counterinsurgency, but someone else already did that, so there's a link. I missed it after February. And then if you want those picture of the cap savers I have in the front slide, I'm sorry, there's your reference. Does anybody have any questions? I'll put the references back up. I think I saw people writing this down. Do you have any questions?
Justin, question 3.
Where are you? Hey!
In this model, if you misassess the threat, how does it come back and counteract that?
So this is a cycle. It requires assessment. Assessment's easy in the physical space. We did something, we all died. It didn't work out so good. Or we did something and we got to where we were going. I think the follow-on to that is metrics, which we don't talk about very often, is measuring the success or failure. So I place out my sensors. I expect to see activity based upon my templated threat activity or threat template. If I do not see that, either it's not there, or I assess them poorly. So I think that there's certainly some merit to talking about the metrics associated with success and failure. I think it's a great point. Thank you. Any other questions? Any questions? All right, we can unlock and unbar the doors. Thank you for your time. We have a couple of trivia questions, or I have a couple of trivia questions. That's right.